Brandon Williamson is proving that he can be trusted for next year.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, and I'm a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan. This is now the 6th season that I've hosted this podcast, and I manage all of our other MLB podcasts for the Locked On MLB channel. We're all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, your Cincinnati Reds, every single day. And I want to thank you for joining me here today because on Locked On Reds, I want to make Locked On Reds accessible for everybody. We're going to talk about the big thing going on in Reds country. We're going to look at some geeky stats and make them make sense. And we're going to just overall overreact to the daily motions of the MLB Ocean and the 162. But I'm glad that you're alongside me here today because Elly De La Cruz has taken a step forward at the plate this year, even if the surface level stats don't show it. We'll talk about that later on. How much is David Bell to blame for these one-run losses that the Reds keep getting? They got another one on Wednesday night. We'll discuss that here in a few minutes, but we will begin today by looking at why Brandon Williamson continues to show why he will be a part of the Reds rotation in 2025. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnMLB to win $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, where we're going to start today is with Brandon Williamson because he continues to look strong. 5 innings, 1 run allowed. It was a solo home run. Nothing too crazy. Nolan Arenado hit that one, but I really was impressed with what he was able to do. And he certainly looks like he's going to be the 5th starter in 2025. Because you can name the top 4 right now. When they're healthy, it's going to be Hunter Green, it's going to be Nick Lodolo, it's going to be Andrew Abbott, it's going to be Rhett Lauder, and it should be Brandon Williamson in that 5th spot. And he has had such a strange season because, remember, this is only his 3rd start. So it's not as if we have seen a huge sample size from him. And in fact, his first 2 starts, he was still ramping up. Really, this was his first actual real start. He pitched 84 pitches in these 5 innings. Quite frankly, I thought he could have went a little bit longer, but I saw what David Bell was doing with it in that he is getting to the point where he is ramped up, but he isn't quite 100% there. He dealt with a shoulder injury all year long, had a setback. It looked like he was coming back in July, then he had a setback, was shut down. Didn't have another rehab start until about 3 weeks ago. He made 1 rehab start for Louisville, and he got called up because of all of the rash of injuries. Everybody's on the injured list for the starting rotation, and the Reds needed to fill innings, so they're like, you know what? Just do your rehab up here. If we can only throw you 2 innings because, we're trying to rehab you, then whatever. That's 2 innings that we'll get from you and not from some jamoke that we go get off the waiver wire. And it made sense. And it continues to make sense. In the 3 starts that he has made, he has 13 innings. He's allowed 3 runs on 7 hits. 2 of those runs came off of home runs. And he has 3 walks compared to 11 strikeouts. His stuff is really playing. And there's no way, like, as much as it's September and most of the guys are either past midseason form and in tired form, ready for the offseason form, Brandon Williamson, because of how little he has pitched, isn't even into midseason form yet. But we're still seeing a lot of good stuff from him. He really has a deadly 1-2 punch with his cut fastball and his changeup. He has been throwing in these 3 starts so far this season. He's been throwing his cut fastball a lot, like over 50% of the time. But it's been very effective because the contact that is made against it is being hit on the ground over 60% of the time. And when he's not getting ground balls with it, he's getting swings and misses with it. And he's able to locate it so well, right around 92 miles an hour. So it's not going to blow anybody away, but just the way that he is able to pitch, like you're able to see kind of how he works. The cut fastball breaks one way, and then the changeup breaks the other way, so he is able to fool hitters. He got some nasty looks, like just guys just frozen looking at that changeup in St. Louis on Wednesday night. He looked phenomenal in those 5 innings, and I think that he will be a guy that you can begin to count on to go 5, 6, 7 innings. I want to see, and I don't know that we'll see it before the end of this year, but maybe early on next year, we see him go a third time through the order. Remember, that was our critique of him last season. The little bit that we did see of Brandon Williamson, it felt like the Reds just absolutely cut it off whenever he went through an opposing lineup twice. Once he got back to the top of the lineup for the third time, they pulled him. So it was like, what are you telling us here? What's going on here? I want to see more of him pitch against the third, through the third time through the order before I'm like really sold on him. But consider the alternatives for a moment. Graham Ashcraft should be in the bullpen. I'm not really sure that we'll see Chase Burns early on in the season. He should be in the minors. And unless the Reds go make a move, and maybe that's what we're saying here, maybe we want to see one more starter sign this offseason. If they sign another guy during the offseason, then you take a lot of pressure off of Brandon Williamson, and he can kind of ease into the season next year. But his personal performance, what we've seen for these 3 starts, is very encouraging to me. It's showing me that he's healthy, where all season long he wasn't. And if he were to go into the offseason without having pitched at all, we would have that question all offseason. Could they count on Brandon Williamson? Is he even going to be on the depth chart for this team next year? He's proving he should be very high on that depth chart, at least when they start spring training. And I think best case scenario is they sign at least one more starting pitcher. But I'm happy to see that he is at least a dude that you can look at a little bit. I've been very impressed with his ability to keep the ball on the ground. He has allowed a couple of fly balls. Those really come from when he is throwing the 4-seam fastball. Throws that just a little over 22% of the time. So you're not seeing it as much as his other 2 pitches, but you are seeing it enough that there probably will be some of those fly balls. He really uses that to set up his other stuff. And it's not a blow it away type of fastball. It's not going to, make anybody look silly, like they swinging underwater or something like that. But it's a third pitch, and it's interesting that you think of the 4-seamer as a third pitch for him, but it's a third pitch for Brandon Williamson because it's all about the cutter and the changeup. And he can kind of change the shape of the cutter. It can be very, a very tight movement, a very tight window, or it can almost look like a slider a little bit. We saw the multiple different ways that he was able to fool some guys, especially Jordan Walker, man. He had Jordan Walker's number, and maybe just major league pitchers in general have Jordan Walker's number from St. Louis. We'll hope to talk with J.D. Haffern from Locked On Cardinals coming up tomorrow to really dissect this series. But, just in general, the performances of Brandon Williamson have been super encouraging. And I really feel like he fits into this starting rotation next year without the Reds going out and making a move. To be clear, would like to see them make a move, but as it stands right now, he's the 5th starter. But the Reds saw an all too familiar end on Wednesday night. Coming up, we will discuss the whole 1-run loss thing. The best way to enhance your baseball watching experience for the rest of this very little bit amount of season is with Prize Picks. They're America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Plus, you can get into all of the great football action that they've got for college football and for professional football as well. In fact, right now they've got a promo that you can basically get a free square every weekend. They have click more on Caleb Williams' passing yards, the Bears rookie quarterback, and as long as he gets more than 1 passing yard, you get that pick. And all you have to do is put 3 other picks in some cases, and you'll be able to really put yourself in the running for 100 times your money. Plus, they've got a great promo going on right now. If you type in the promo code LOCKEDONMLB when you create an account, you will get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win that's over on PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. And again, use that promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. Just click more or less on your favorite players, because with PrizePicks, you can run your game. And speaking of your game, FanDuel is the best way to enjoy your sports experience even more so, because you can check out all of their great betting lines that they've got on their point spreads and their money lines, all this other stuff. In fact, right now they've got a great promo profit boost for the NFL Sunday slate of games. You can double your winnings on pregame moneyline bets. Profit Boost will be live starting Thursday. That's today, September 12th. View your account page now to learn more about your boost. Plus, they've still got that promotion going on now through September 22nd that when you place a $5 bet, you can get 3 weeks free of NFL Sunday Ticket with YouTube and YouTube TV. All you need is a YouTube TV-based plan, and you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and download America's #1 sportsbook. We're talking Reds baseball here on Locked On Reds every single day, all Reds, all the time, even through the offseason. You know, you can get your Reds content right here with us. And coming up on the next Locked On Reds podcast, I mentioned it a few minutes ago, JD Haffron from Locked On Cardinals will join us to unpack the season series, all of the stuff between the Reds and the Cardinals here in 2024. And we're going to play a little bit of game. We're going to see who said what. Was it David Bell, Ollie Marmol? Was it John Mozeliak, or was it Nick Kroll? Because, quite frankly, they all sound the same, and we're going to show why on tomorrow's podcast. Make sure you join us. But looking at Wednesday night, I was encouraged by Brandon Williamson. I was yet again discouraged by the whole one-run loss thing. And it's been a thing all season long. Because the Reds just haven't been good enough in the margins this year. It's more of a post-mortem at this point, not really saying anything as if they've got time to fix it. I think that the Reds are far enough out of the playoff race here that I'm not going to go crazy about the fact that they lost one-run game to the point that I'm like, oh, this was detrimental. It was detrimental like 2 months ago. But it is just more of the same. More of the same evidence, more of the same results, and quite frankly, now it's being detrimental to the whole most interesting 500 ball club in Major League Baseball thing because, they lost 2-1. It's their 27th one-run loss of the season, which actually isn't that crazy. They lost more one-run games last year. It's just they ended up winning more one-run games last year as well. But they are 14-27 in one-run games this year. 13 more losses than wins. And that's been one of the biggest things. And it's not as if, you know, if I were to ask David Bell and be like, you know, what's your strategy for one-run ball games? You know what they would say? Not to have them. They want to win by 2, 3, 4, 5. They want to win by 10. They're not trying to win by 1. But in these games where it's a one-run, like the little tiniest margin, the David Bell era hasn't been that good. In fact, when you combine, this is something that I've heard a little bit, so we're going to do this quick exercise, is that one-run games are a little fluky if you look within a specific season. You've got to look over multiple seasons to really learn something. So, okay, over the last 2 years, the Reds are 48-56 in one-run ball games, 2023, 2024. They are still 8 games under 500 in one-run games. Again, speaks to the margins. Let's go even further. Let's look at the entire David Bell tenure since he got here in 2019. For those 5 years, the Reds are 124. They've won 124 one-run games. They've lost 140. They're 16 games under 500. Now, you are talking about a bad year in 2019 and a bad year in 2022, where quite frankly, the margins were a little bit secondary to what the Reds were aiming at. But the margins imply like fundamentals and making good plays, making good fielding plays, making good decisions on the base paths, things like that. That's what we're talking about with the margins. In fact, my perfect example is this, and I'll kind of paint the picture in case you didn't watch the game. Last night, there was a situation where the Cardinals were finally getting base runners. Michael Ciani led off with a single, and he is the Cardinals' leading base stealer, former Reds prospect too. Always enjoyed watching him in Dayton. But he is the leading base stealer for St. Louis, so you knew what he was going to do. And the Reds were ready for it. The Reds strategized for it. They pitched out. Luke Maile jumps out of his stance, catches the ball in a perfect throwing position, and he messes up the throw. It's things like that. The little things, which honestly is not a little thing. It's kind of like a normal, obvious thing. But those are the things that the Reds are not hitting on this year. It's September. You're not hitting on it now. You were never going to hit on it ever. And Luke Maile, the throw that he makes, it's not only is it, behind the runner so that Jonathan India can't really catch it, but it goes out into center field. And Michael Ciani kind of slid awkwardly head first into the base and kind of messed up his wrist. You saw him kind of shaking his wrist a little bit. He was fine. He stayed in. But it was to the point where it was enough that it distracted him. He didn't jump up and run to third. But you then he then came around to score on a hit by Paul Goldschmidt that was on the center field warning track, deepest part of the ballpark, and it looked like TJ Friedl had a chance to catch it. Again, a play that marginally, does he make that catch? Does he get the throw in? The run probably doesn't score. But it looked like maybe he lost the ball in the lights. He wasn't quite tracking it well enough. And then at the end, he stabbed out to try and catch it, but he was too far away. And so it just didn't work. Two plays that, honestly, if the lineup were hitting, it's probably not that big of a deal, but you don't always get that clutch hitting. And I know there were a lot of folks, and I got some weird responses. Somebody doesn't just want Joel McKeithen fired. They want more than that, which I can't speak to that. That's weird. But they were citing the deficiencies of the Reds with runners in scoring position. That is absolutely a statistic that comes and goes with even the best of teams. There's never been a team that goes all throughout the season and hits like 350 with runners in scoring position. I probably should fact check myself a little bit on that, but that's not necessarily something that happens too often. Usually you're hitting about, the good teams hit like 280 with runners in scoring position, 270. And then you've got some teams that hit like 210. Like I think the Cardinals are actually one of the worst teams with hitting with runners in scoring position. It just so happened this time it worked because the Reds were just a few inches off on a couple of different plays to make a play and get an out. But that's been the case all year. Looking at a couple of marginal statistics, and quite frankly, outs above average is not a marginal statistic, but it speaks to fielding. It shows a part. It gives you a tiny bit of understanding for how a team fields. The Reds are 25th in the major leagues in outs above average. Base running, they're in the top half. They're 11th in base running runs, which is a statistic on StatCast, which really focuses more so on the taking of extra bases. Are you thrown out trying to take extra bases? Things like that, which the Reds do get thrown out quite an awful lot trying to take an extra base, but they do take a lot of extra bases on top of that, which leads them to be in the top half. They're 11th in Major League Baseball for that. But on the opposite side of things, they're not really great at controlling the running game. When other teams try to take the extra base, when other teams try to steal, the Reds aren't so good at that. In fact, especially on the stealing part, the Reds are 23rd in the major leagues in caught steals above average. So like the plays that a catcher should make, do they make them? And then you got the plays that a catcher probably isn't supposed to make. Does the catcher make them? Trying to catch a guy stealing. The Reds are not very good at that. So all that to being said, the margins have been a problem for the Reds this year. And that is why the one-run loss thing is such an issue. And looking at it year to year and, in a vacuum, 2024 one-loss records, you don't go crazy about. But the fact that for 5 years now, under David Bell, the Reds have been a losing team in one-run games, I think there's something to be had about that. That players are the ones that win and lose ball games. But the one constant over these last 5 years on the Reds team has been David Bell. And they just don't win one-run ball games under David Bell. Because they just haven't been good enough in the margins. Something that I've mentioned at different times this season is that I've been seeing Elly De La Cruz's plate discipline improve this year. Coming up, we'll dive into what that improvement actually looks like. Hey, look, I know when life gets busy, fitting in a workout can be stressful. With Tonal, you can get efficient workouts personalized just for you and are available with the amount of time that you have. Tonal is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps you get stronger. It's powered by AI. Tonal learns with every rep, so it can deliver workouts personalized just for you. Tonal learns from your movement and provides suggested weight recommendations for every move with detailed progress reports. They even create personalized program and workout suggestions or recommendations based on your individual goals. It's like having a personal trainer at home with you, as Tonal will optimize every workout just for you. Right now, Tonal is offering our listeners $200 off your Tonal purchase with promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Tonal.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off your purchase. Again, TONAL.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB is get you $200 off your in-home workout today. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. Also, make sure you bookmark CincinnatiRedsTalk.com. A lot of great written content about the Reds over there between myself, James Rapine, and Greg Kuffner. Bringing some Reds content to you over at CincinnatiRedsTalk.com. All right, Elly De La Cruz this season has really taken a step forward in a lot of areas of his game. We see the wins above replacement. We see the garnering of MVP conversations, and we see him on national commercials and stuff like this. And quite frankly, real quick, this is a little bit aside and not necessarily the point that I want to make here, but it's a point that I want to say. The idea that we have to worry about where Elly De La Cruz will be in 5 years, doesn't that just say how good he is? If we're that worried about where he's going to be in 5 years? Anyway, it's a small market problem. Yankees fans, Dodgers fans, those guys, they never have to worry about that. But I'm saying, you don't worry about the guys that are mid. You worry about the guys that are great. So what's that say about Elly? And part of the reasons that he is there is that the plate discipline has taken a step forward. And now, listen, two things are true with this. Elly leads the major leagues in strikeouts. He has 194 of them. And the other thing that is true is that Elly has cut down on how much he swings and how much he swings at pitches outside the zone, how much he chases. So with that, I mean, there are some basic stats that people are still trying to ding him on. They're dinging him on the strikeouts and they're dinging him on the batting average. The batting average definitely took a dip last night. He went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. And I figured this would be the right time to talk about plate discipline because he struck out 3 times last night. I know, the irony is hilarious. It's not lost on me at all. But look, when it comes to the season, looking at it as a whole, Elly has cut down on swinging at bad pitches. In fact, he is in the top half of Major League Baseball. The 38%, he's top half of baseball in chase rate. He does a fantastic job of laying off the bad pitches. Now, he's not perfect at it. He still chases sometimes. That's not to say that he's, never chases at bad pitches. But last year, He always chased at bad pitches. Last year, the folks that were trying to, pour the Aristides Aquino honey in everybody's ear, the comparison, they had some ammo, right? They don't have any ammo this year. He's not that guy. He's a much more smarter hitter than Aristides Aquino ever was. But he's not perfect with it. He's still improving. The other thing for me about this is that he is in the top 23% of the league in walk rate. He is very good at taking a walk. And part of this, and there's like a double-edged sword here, but the plate discipline thing stems from the fact that he actually doesn't swing a lot, percentage-wise. In fact, among 135 qualified batters in Major League Baseball, Elly has swung the 13th. He's like 13th in lowest swing percentage. He only swings 42.2% of the time. It's almost 10% less than he swung last year. He is taking a lot more pitches. He is watching a lot more pitches. Now that has translated to some strikeouts in the zone. He has watched strike 3 go by that is a legitimate strike zone. He's also seen a lot of this. And on YouTube, I'm showing this graphic. If you're listening on the audio version of the podcast, I'm showing a graphic of Elly De La Cruz's strike zone and all of the called strikes that he has faced this year. According to Baseball Savant, he's faced over 490 called strikes. And there are so many of them. And this is actually sort of surprising to me as to where they are, but there are so many of them that are outside the zone. Most of them are either, and it depends. It does not, this is just looking at every pitch that he has faced, not like what side of the plate is he hitting on, but they're off the plate. They're not high, they're not low, they're off the plate to the sides. That has been a huge thing, and we've seen it a lot, really, in this series in St. Louis. Now, for Larry Vanover's money, he couldn't call a strike to save his life in the first game for any player, much less Elly. But even in the second game, Elly was getting a lot of weird strike calls that, at least for the box on TV, it wasn't in the box. And then you look at the box on StatCast, it's still not in the box. And the box is where the strike is. And I would love this because they've been testing this whole, ABS, automatic balls and strike system in AAA, where it's just a challenge system, where if the batter's like, I don't think that was a strike, they call for a challenge, they show it kind of like in tennis, and it's like, does it touch the line? Hey, it touches the line of the box of the strike zone, it's a strike, and if it doesn't, it's a ball. I think that Elly would be winning a lot of these challenges because he has faced a lot of called strikes that are not strikes. And that changes in at bat. When it could be 3-1 and now it's 2-2. When it could be 3 balls and 1 strike and now it's all of a sudden 2 balls and 2 strikes. But Elly just watched a pitch that was an inch off the plate get called a strike. Now he has to change his understanding of the strike zone. So now whoever's on the mound can kind of give him something a little bit more interesting. They can work with it a little bit more and maybe force him to chase a pitch that he otherwise wouldn't have swung at anyway. I firmly believe that Elly understands the strike zone, and Elly has gotten so much better at pitch recognition. But it's things like this that really throw him off. When he's got to figure out where the strike zone is for this particular umpire, on top of the fact that he is still learning an everyday approach to being a major league hitter, that's kind of tough. And the fact that he has been able to do what he has done while still figuring this out just speaks to his elite talent. Think about this for a minute. His batting average, the .259 batting average wouldn't be great in years past. It wouldn't. I understand that. But there's a lot of guys this year that are suffering from that because batting averages are down across the league. No player is immune to their era. Like some guys have much better years than others. It just happens. The Bobby Witts of the world happen. He's hitting 340. Do you know how many other guys are hitting over 300 right now? Guys not named Bobby Witt, there's only 7 other guys. There's a total of 8 players that are hitting 300 or better. And let's expand that for a moment, because Juan Soto, well, he's hitting 290. You tell me Juan Soto's not good. He's one of 15 players. In all of Major League Baseball, I told you there was 135 qualified batters for the batting title. 15 of them have a batting average of 290 or better. That's way below league average, or way below average in years past. The league average batting average is 244. So when you look at that, Elly's 15 points above league average. So yet again, you need to understand some different stuff. Like, yes, the standard's 300. We want guys to hit 300, but that doesn't mean that when they don't hit 300 that they're bad. This is the weirdest sport in the world, that when you fail 7 times out of 10, you're amazing. But when you fail 7.5 times out of 10, you're probably still pretty good. It's just a strange thing, this sport that we love, this baseball that we love. But I feel like there's a lot of folks that want to harp on the 194 strikeouts and the 259 batting average and say this is why he isn't as good as we think he is. And if that is your argument, you are missing the much bigger picture. You are missing everything else, quite frankly, because that is only a piece. And we have proven over the last 20 years or so that batting average, if it's only like the beginning of the argument, there's lots more to it than that. And he has been so much better at everything else. I just can't wait to see how he continues to grow. And I think he might finish the year with 6 wins above replacement. I said, bold prediction, there'd be a player that finishes with a WAR of 6 or better for the Reds this year. It hasn't happened in a few years. Elly De La Cruz is right there to do it. Before we go, I would like to invite you to become a Locked On Reds Insider. I'm offering a free 14-day trial by texting the word Insider to 513-597-0944. We'll text back and forth daily about the Reds, and you can become that friend that everyone looks to for Reds info, and you can talk baseball with me. After the trial, it's just $4.99 a month. Let's talk Reds. Text Insider to 513-597-0944 for a free 14-day trial today. But that'll wrap up this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks as always for making us your first listen every single day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB as Sully gets you ready for the Fall Classic as we're moving through the final days of the regular season here in September. It's Locked On MLB. It's just like Locked On Reds, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. In fact, I've even got a link to Locked On MLB in the description of today's episode, so you don't have to go searching for it. Just scroll down to the description and click the link for you right there. But hey, you can trust that as we move through to the end of the season, we will be Locked On Reds every single day.